Helio Castroneves will return full-time in 2021 with Meyershank Racing. The dream for a fifth 500 is still alive, and to that effect, so is a possible first championship for Helio. Somehow, he has not won one yet. We'll talk about that and much, much more in this week's racing news. So first up, with the announcement that LMH cars will be allowed to compete at Daytona, a couple of teams have announced a intent to race at Daytona, or at least that they're looking into it. First up, Dodge. Now, what would Dodge have? Now, the Peugeot car was announced a few weeks ago. Now, the relationship between Dodge and Peugeot, they are both owned by the same parent company, Stellantis. Now, what the possibility is that they would take a rebranded Peugeot to Daytona and race it there in IMSA. So that would be a cool possibility to have the European manufacturer racing over in IMSA and then rebrand it, or in WEC, sorry. And then have the American manufacturer rebranded over in the US with Dodge. So kind of fitting the market better for both of those, especially with Dodge, because not a lot of people know here, not a lot of like the mainstream people in the US know what Peugeot is, but most everyone knows what Dodge is. So if you have a Dodge competing in the 24 Hours of Le Mans, that's probably going to get more. It's going to be better for a parent company like Stellantis. They're going to get more benefit out of running Dodge over Peugeot. So that'll be interesting to see if they end up running that. Another company considering a adventure into IMSA is Toyota. Obviously, they've won the last 24 Hours of Le Mans and could have won in 2017 if it wasn't for the engine cutting out with like 5 minutes to go. So Toyota is looking at a possibility of competing in the U.S. Obviously, they're quite an established market here. And they, to my knowledge, haven't competed at Daytona in a while, if ever. So it would be interesting to see if Toyota would be strongly considering a venture into U.S. endurance racing. That'll be cool to see how that turns out. And last up is Ferrari, with their announcement of a 2023 LMH program a little while back. It'll be interesting to see if Ferrari will make an attempt to run back in the top class in the U.S. So speaking of Toyota and their LMH program, there's a possibility that Toyota could be having some reliability problems with their GR010 hypercar. Now, this was displayed pretty glaringly at Monza this weekend, or last weekend on Sunday, where their car's engine cut out about an hour and a half from the end. When they were in the lead, they ended up giving up the lead to the Glickenhaus car. They ended up getting that car to run again, and that car ended up winning the race. But both Toyotas, actually, the 7 car was the one that ended up having the one engine issue and coming back and winning the race. But the 8 Toyota was having issues all race. They practically couldn't get that car to run for very long at all. So that's in a 6-hour race. So over a 24-hour race, there's possible major concern about the Toyota dying and cutting out, the engine cutting out in the middle of the race. So that'll be something that Toyota will be focusing on in the next month before the 24 hours. Now, I would assume this is not a major thing. I would assume that Toyota, of all people, is probably going to be able to get that corrected. It might have been that they were running more aggressive engine settings or something, that they ended up having issues with that. So who knows? It might be that the Toyotas are having issues, and it might just be that they were having some technical issue that they should be able to fix at Le Mans. There won't be BOP at Le Mans, so the engines won't be restricted in any way. I don't know if that'll make it better or worse. It sounds like it could make the problem worse, but maybe it's restricting the engine away that's hurting it, and if they take BOP off, that'll help it more. So that'll be interesting to watch in another month at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. So next up, we're going to move to the IndyCar silly season world. So Rahal Letterman-Lanigan has talked quite quite seriously about the prospect of bringing a third car full-time next year. That would likely be the 45 car, the same entry that Santino Ferrucci has been running for most races after the Indy 500 this year, and possibly most, if not all of the races, till the end of the year. None of that has been confirmed except Nashville. There's been possible talks about also Takuma Sato possibly leaving Rahal and Lanigan Racing at the end of this year. So that brings into question two seats with quite a few drivers in play for that. First up, Takuma Sato, obviously, and Santino Ferrucci, the two guys that are in those two seats, would obviously be looking to get back in their cars for next year. Now, the Sato deal apparently sounds like it's closer to possibly being signed, but by no means guaranteed, because Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing has a lot of cars that a lot of drivers that they're trying to test for next year to try to figure out who they will put in their cars. So a possible Sato deal has been put on hold until all of those drivers are tested. The other two drivers that they're possibly looking at would be Jack Harvey, who, due to the deal that we'll talk about a little later in this video, has lost his seat at Meyer Shank Racing. So he'll be looking to possibly take a full-time seat in either the 30 or the 45, depending on how it works out next year. The other candidate is Oliver Askew, looking to make a return to full-time IndyCar racing next year after being booted out of his seat by McLaren last year. Obviously, that'd be great for Askew, because I think Askew really deserved his seat and kind of got shafted. Because, I mean, he had a concussion, and they took him out of the seat, and, like, he had actually said that he didn't want to give up the seat because he felt that if he gave up the seat because of the concussion that he would end up losing his ride for the next year, and that's exactly what happened. So, I really think Askew deserves a seat in IndyCar, and hopefully he can get a seat somewhere, and it might end up being Rahal next year. Though it sounds like a Jack Harvey deal is quite close to being signed. So, to me, if I had to guess, the lineup is probably going to be, of course, Graham Rahal. That's pretty much a given at this point. Takuma Sato and Jack Harvey, though both the 30 and the 45 are somewhat up for grabs. So we'll see how that develops over the next couple of months throughout the IndyCar silly season. One other thing to add, Roman Grosjean will make his IndyCar Oval debut at Gateway later on this year. He'll be running the 51, which will push Pietro Fittipaldi out to the 52 at Gateway. So both Roman and Pietro will be able to run at Gateway. It'll be very interesting to see how Roman does on his Oval debut, because obviously we've seen him do great for the equipment he's in his the first part of his first full season in IndyCar, and we've seen drivers like Fernando Alonso do quite well coming over from IndyCar to run ovals. So that'll be quite interesting to see how well Roman does. Does he have similar pace as Fernando, or is he better on the road courses than he is the ovals? I'm quite excited to see. I think Roman will be quite a good oval racer, though that's just complete speculation. I have no idea. But that'll be very exciting to watch at Gateway coming up soon. So NASCAR has given the green light on the delivery of the NASCAR Next Gen car to teams, which will likely mean that they will be running that car all of the races next year, barring some type of major situation with safety or something. So this seems to confirm that NASCAR doesn't have any concerns about the safety, which hopefully means that the reports about possible safety concerns were wrong, which hopefully that's the case. Hopefully they're not just delivering a car that's unsafe, that they're delivering to teams and having them test or whatever. Hopefully the car is safe, and we can see that out next year without any concerns about driver safety and possible major injuries due to a unsafe car. Other NASCAR things for 2022, Brad Keselowski will take a part ownership role at Roush Fenway Racing and race for them in 2022. Now, Keselowski had been, he had left Team Penske to make way for Austin Cindric. So Brad's taken kind of a step down, at least in terms of ride quality for NASCAR, because obviously Penske is a much better team than Fenway, but Fenway is Roush, but I have no idea what I'm talking about. Yeah, Brad will probably be a little less competitive, just more based off the car he's in, but it'll be interesting to see how that ownership thing will work out. It'll be interesting to see how much control Brad has over the Roush team, and what that all holds for Brad in his career. So here's actually a bit more details about this. First of all, Keselowski's going to be driving the 6 next year. So Ryan Newman is going to lose his drive next year unless Roush is going to open up a third car, which doesn't seem likely. Second, Keselowski's actually going to take quite a large position within Roush Racing. So he's going to have quite a lot of control, and that'll only get bigger after he retires. So Keselowski's obviously taken quite a big role at Roush Fenway Racing. So it seems like this will be quite a long-term deal for him, if not just where he runs his career out, which, I mean, saying as he only got here in like 2008 or 2009, he's got quite a long way to go. So Keselowski might be at Roush Fenway for a while before his career ends out, basically, because there's much older drivers. The first thing that comes to mind is Kevin Harvick. Obviously, he came in 2001. That are still, I mean, driving and in the series. Kevin Harvick doesn't seem to have any major, like, retirement rumors or anything. So Keselowski seems like he'll probably be at Roush Fenway Racing for the next 5 or 10 years or something. Nothing has been finalized, though, with a upper management position and part ownership. It seems like Keselowski will likely stay there for a while. So that'll be interesting to see. For Ryan Newman, obviously sucks that he's going to lose his ride. I'm from Indiana. I'm a little biased. If you don't know, he's from Indiana. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up. Yeah, I don't have any idea right now where Newman's going to end up. Maybe he'll end up just not having a ride. That would really suck. But really, the NASCAR world is only getting more populated, and there's less and less seats like every day now. So it's going to end up being harder and harder to find a ride the further on you go. So hopefully Newman can find a ride. So that'll be something to watch in the next couple of months. Kyle Busch will not receive a penalty for bumping the pace car at the race at New Hampshire last Sunday. Now, if you don't know, here's some context around it. So basically, the pace car kind of controls the weather situation for NASCAR, basically. They decide if it's raining, they decide if they think they should go green or not. The pace car driver has a major decision in whether or not they'll go green if it's raining. Basically, just because they're out on the track, they have a better feel for how the grip level is. So basically, at the start of the race for New Hampshire on Sunday, NASCAR had thrown the green. It was kind of misting. It was not exactly great conditions, and there was definitely going to be rain on the track. And on lap 7, all 3 of the leaders, which were all Gibbs cars, ended up spinning coming into one of the turns, and 2 out of the 3 of them ended up having to retire from the race because of it. That was Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. Now, Kyle was mad about this, and he was mad at the pace car driver because kind of the scapegoat for them not throwing the red flag since it's rainy. Kyle Busch went up and just kind of tapped the bumper of the pace car. There was, I mean, on the TV camera, it looked like the pace car's bumper got bent a little bit, but kind of just popped back into place. It wasn't like he went up and rammed him or anything, but definitely tried to send the pace car driver a message. It's quite interesting that NASCAR hasn't, given Kyle, at least a fine or something, or if not, to me, it seems like with the way NASCAR handles this stuff generally, that he'd end up getting 20 or 30 points worth of a fine or something, if not worse. Or 20 or 30 points penalized and a fine, if not worse. Sorry, clarifying myself. But it's interesting to see that, especially Kyle Busch, because he's had stuff in the past where he'll criticize NASCAR about things and get fined or something for it. He had talked about that with the high downforce package a couple of years ago, saying how he hates it, and NASCAR went and fined him, which seems like a much less offense than going and hitting the pace car in the middle of a race with a car that can barely drive. I'm surprised to see they haven't fined him here, at least. Do I think it's the right call? Maybe. I mean, it's a little bit of a... I mean, I guess hitting the pace car isn't the place for boys have at it, in my opinion. Like, I think probably a fine would have been warranted, at least, just to send a message like, hey, don't go hit the pace car. This isn't Days of Thunder. But yeah, that's interesting to see that he didn't get fined, at least, for that. Yeah. Dragon Speed is making an attempt to run DPI in its final year in 2022, but they can't find an engine and a chassis that they can run. First, they tried to go to Acura and find a chassis and an engine that they could run, but once it was announced that their two teams for 2022 were going to be Wayne Taylor Racing and Michael Shank Racing, that deal fell through. Then they tried to partner up with Wayne Taylor Racing to possibly do a shared entry, and that didn't work either. So then they tried to go to JDC Miller Motorsports. They had a chassis. They did not have an engine. So then they tried to go to GM to find an engine. They could not find an engine. So now they are going to try to go to Mazda and run their old RT24 DPI. So that is still in progress. So we'll be watching to see if anything else happens with that. Hopefully, since it's the last year in DPI, surely at some point they're going to find a engine and a chassis that they can actually run. Now, they're wanting to run DPI next year to try to transition into the LMDH program as that opens in 2023. Now, hopefully they can get that put together. It would be their first time in a top class since running in 2018 with the Dallara BR1 LMP1 in WEC. Hopefully they can get that put together, but it's not seeming very likely right now unless Mazda is willing to give them a chassis and an engine. So that'll be interesting to see how that develops over the next couple months or so before that stuff ends up kind of having to be finalized. Hendrick Motorsports had an engine mishap over the weekend, and it had nothing to do with performance on track, but more stuff happening in the garage. So basically, teams are allocated a certain amount of engines that they are to keep within a certain car. So let's say an engine is allocated to car number 1. That engine has to stay at car number 1. You cannot give that engine to car number 2 or something. That has to stay at that certain car. So basically what happened with Hendrick, one of Chase Elliott's engines somehow, through management issues, ended up in Alex Bowman's car on accident. Now, Hendrick has been penalized quite heavily for this. They got an L1 level, well, not quite heavily. They got an L1 level penalty. Greg Ives and Alan Gustafson, both the crew chiefs for the 48 and the 9 team, were fined $50,000. Motorsports Executive VP and General Manager Jeff Andrews and track engine supporter Scott Maxim were both given 1 race suspensions for the next race. Also, 25-point penalty for the 48 and the 9 cars. Now, that doesn't have any impact on Bowman, really, or Elliott majorly. Elliott fell from 5th to 6th in the regular season standings. That's the only effect it has. I mean, they're both in the playoffs at this point, so it won't have any major effect on the championship, but maybe the next race will be a little tougher for Hendrick with the suspensions or whatever, especially since with the Olympic break, it'll be a few weeks before that's back. So here's a statement from Hendrick. We have, due to an administrative error, one of our sealed engines assigned to the 9 car was unintentionally allocated to our number 48 team at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Although the engine passed tech inspection and absolutely no competitive advantage was gained, we acknowledge NASCAR's process was not followed correctly in this instance. The rules regarding this assignment of sealed engines are clear, and we understand and respect their decision to issue a penalty. We apologize for the mistake and have taken steps to ensure it will not be repeated. Now, I agree with this personally with the whole, like, it's not going to give him any competitive advantage. They're the same engines. Like, doesn't seem like there's anything malicious going on. Like it said, they'll be taking steps to make sure it doesn't happen again. So, as long as everything stays together, well, it should be fine. But Hendrick gets set back a little bit with these penalties. So finally to the big news of the episode, which is that Helio Castroneves will be staying at Michael Shank Racing next year, but not just for the 6-race schedule that he had this year. He'll be doing it full-time next year. His return to full-time racing in IndyCar for the first time since 2017, and the first time with a non-Penske entry. So this includes, obviously, an attempt for a 5th Indianapolis 500 win. That'll probably be the main goal of the season, because I assume in a Meyer Shank racing car, he's not going to be able to make a run for a championship or anything. That'll be interesting to see over the 5 more races he has this year, how those go, and if he might actually have a chance at going for his first ever title. But I would assume that that's probably reasonably out of the question. The main hope is to try to win a 5th Indy 500, which I think in a Andretti affiliated car with a driver like Helio, if you get the right, month of May or whatever, you could probably see Helio winning a 5th. Maybe not, probably not, but as an Helio fan, hopefully. Now, that's not the only thing about this deal. Meyer Shank Racing has also announced that the 60 car will also have a full-time entry. So the Helio's running in the 06 next year, like he was this year. So they're going to be upgrading to 2 full-time cars with both Helio in the 06 and a driver to be named in the 60 car. So that'll be another full-time seat to be filled for next year, continuing to add to the ever-increasing grid size within IndyCar. So that's great. Helio gets a full-time ride, and we have another full-time seat open for next year. So that'll be interesting to see where that seat goes. I can't wait to see Helio back for the first time since 2017 in a full-time capacity. So that's about all I have for this episode. There's not any racing this weekend, so not going to have any race reviews out or anything. So I'm going to go ahead and just end it off here. That's about all I have. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I'll see you all probably for the next this week's racing news video, unless there's some other major news that deserves its own video. Thank you guys all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye.